All right, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Tracking Billable Hours with Timesheets by Tempo on Cloud. In this webinar, we'll focus on a workflow that is popular with many of our customers, tracking billable time for the purpose of invoicing clients and then getting paid for that work. And with that, we will get started. So I'm Connor, a learning and onboarding specialist here at Tempo. I work on learning initiatives at Tempo, and my main focus today is to maximize the value that you get out of this learning session. So any feedback or suggestions is welcome. Also presenting today is my teammate, Edna Kruger, who will walk us through some important billing background and setup steps. We've also got Catherine Vargas, who will cover what's coming up for timesheets on the roadmap. And we have Susan Wu answering all your questions in the question box. We will begin by quickly highlighting what Timesheets by Tempo is and what solutions it provides. We know that the best part of sessions like this is getting to see our products in action. So most of our time will be spent demoing the product. But first, we'll cover a few basics about tracking billable hours in timesheets. Then we'll get into demos for how to successfully set up timesheets for billable hours, how to log your billable and non-billable hours, and how to create reports on these hours for invoicing your clients. We'll also look at a few integrations that Timesheets has with other products, to complete your billing experience in relation to project management and revenue tracking. Then Catherine will walk us through our 2023 Timesheets roadmap. And finally, we'll finish up today's webinar by answering some of your questions. Okay, so before we get into a demo, a little bit of a review for some of you, or many of you probably, and maybe some new information for those trialists and people that haven't started using Timesheets yet. So Timesheets by Tempo is the #1 time tracking app for Jira in the Atlassian marketplace. Timesheets makes it easy to collect and report on time tracking data, provides streamlined cost reporting for better financial management, and integrates with numerous applications on the Atlassian marketplace, which allows you to fit it into your existing set of tools. Tempo is dedicated to delivering industry-leading SPM, or strategic portfolio management, solutions that go beyond single products. By creating seamless integrations combining the power of our impressive suite of products on the Atlassian marketplace, this includes Timesheets, Planner, Cost Tracker, Structure, and Custom Charts by Tempo. We empower you to navigate the complexities of strategic portfolio management. To highlight these efforts, we have a series of sessions coming your way in the fall to showcase some of these integrations and solutions. A little bit more on that later. And with that, I will pass it over to Edna to start talking through the billable hours workflow.
All right, thanks, Connor. I'm going to just share my screen here. Okay, so today, yes, we are going to look at how billing can be done in Timesheets. And billing is a common task if you're often in professional services, but other types of organizations may also have certain departments or even individuals who do billable work. Regardless of what your organization is, Timesheets can help you track, organize, and report on the time logged to this billable work. And from this data, you can create an invoice for your client. Now, there are 2 billing workflows that are possible in Timesheets. Today, we're going to look at the simpler Jira project-based workflow that uses the billable hours field. This one is often popular with smaller companies or professional service agencies. People, like I said, with smaller companies tend to like using this because it's a little bit more straightforward. But if you're maybe an enterprise company or a larger company, more complex multi-project workflows, you will probably want to use Tempo accounts. And maybe you have multiple teams working on your contracts, or they're just a little bit more complicated. This is a really great way to work. And we're not going to really show that method today, but there could be another webinar if people want to see this workflow. So you could leave comments if you're interested in having this, and we'll see what we can do. So while it's technically possible to use these 2 workflows together, we recommend that you use only one method at a time, and this will keep your billable and your non-billable data accurate, which is obviously pretty important when you're invoicing. Second important point to know about timesheets is that all log time is actually billable time by default. And you probably won't notice this until you need to distinguish between the billable and non-billable hours in reports later on. So the number of billable hours will always match the number of hours that you log unless you change those billable hours. And this is where the billable hours field comes in. And that's what we're looking at today. So some of you who have used timesheets for a while might be familiar with this field, but if you're not, it's just simply a field in the log time form that lets you change the number of billable hours when you're logging your time. So I'll show you how to make this billable hours field magically appear, and Connor will show you how to use it when you log your time. One more thing about billable hours is non-billable hours. And these are also usually part of doing work for a contract. This is often related overhead work, such as administrative tasks or training or research or meetings. Basically, work that you don't want to bill your client for, but you still want to keep track of the time that you spend towards it for the contract. And you need to keep these hours separate from the billable ones, which is very important when you're running reports later on. So you can deal with non-billable hours in two ways. You either enter 0 in the billable hours field, as Connor will show you, or you can configure these non-billable issues to be something called internal issues, and that prevents them from being considered as billable. And I will show you how that works later on. Here is the big picture with billable hours. So this is kind of an overview of the workflow that you can use when you're using billable hours. So first off, you set up your Jira projects, and this is usually the project manager or account manager or even a Jira admin sets up your projects for your contract. And the way in which you set up your Jira projects is kind of key to keeping your team's work organized for each contract. It makes it simple. You can make it simple for your team to track their time, make it easy for the Jira admins to manage project permissions, and it can help project managers easily run reports later on. So for these projects, the Jira admin grants the set billable hours permission to the employees who are logging their time on this contract. And this permission is what makes the billable hours field magically appear for these employees. So it's a really important step. Then afterwards, the tempo admin can configure non-billable issues as internal issues. You'll see if that works for you. Once everything is kind of set up, you can have the employees log their billable and non-billable time for the contract, entering their time accurately in the billable hours field. Then running reports. This is like sort of your final main step for all your data. Is every month or maybe at different milestones, the project manager or account manager runs reports for this contract to know what the billable hours are. And then the finance team can create the invoice from that. So once they get the report data, the finance team creates the invoice, sends it to their client, and then you get paid, which is kind of the whole point of doing all this work. So this is the big payoff. Just to help you understand things a little bit, how this billable hours method is used, we're going to be following our fictional company called the Apollo Consulting Group. So they're a small environmental consulting agency whose current contract is for their client called Lunar Industries. So they'll be doing a sustainability assessment of Lunar Industries, of their mining operations on the moon. So all of this work will be billable, except for a few overhead and training issues that will be non-billable. So this group likes to use only one Jira project for their contract for this client. And that just helps to keep it a lot easier. Everything's in one place. It's easy to control permissions for this Jira project, and it lets the project manager easily run a report on later on that will be used for invoicing. So all of the consultants working on this contract will be granted the set billable hours permission, and we're going to have all of the non-billable issues will be configured as internal, so they are not considered as billable at all. So I'm going to start you off by showing the first 3 steps of the setup, which is setting up your Jira projects for your contract, granting the set billable hours permission for these projects, and then configuring the non-billable issues as internal. So I'm going to go over here to my instance. So here I'm in Jira, actually, not Tempo. So we're going to first look at setting up the Jira projects. So here we have our single Jira project called Lunar Sustain. It has a combination of issues that are going to be used for billable work. And you can see with these epics, this is kind of billable work stuff. But at the bottom here in this overhead epic, you see that there's a number of issues that are actually for non-billable work, or they can be non-billable. So you can have one project that contains both these issues, and the way that you manage the non-billable issues is pretty key, and we'll show you that later on. So you could also create 2 projects for each contract, and a lot of companies do this. You have one project for tracking all your billable work, and then you create another project, like say our lunar overhead project could be used for just the non-billable issues. So you can keep them separate that way too. And that's sometimes a good way for people to work. Just when you run your reports later on with 2 projects, you just have to make sure to include both of these for your report so that you get the total hours. You could also create multiple projects, like sometimes people have several teams working on the same contract. So here you have the design team, learning design, QA. All of these projects could be considered as part of one contract. So when you run your report later on, again, you always have to make sure that you include all of the projects for that contract. And probably the best way of doing it is to just create a JQL that includes all of those projects so that nothing goes missing when you want to run your reports later on. So that is the project. So now I will go to project settings, and I'm going to grant the set billable hours permission, which is pretty much key to this workflow. So I go to permissions here, and I have this billable hours permission scheme that I created. I created a separate one from the default permission scheme, but you don't really need to do that. Sometimes maybe it's a good way for people to have, like, if you have a lot of Jira projects that are for billable time, you might want to always have them use the same permission scheme just to keep it clean. But really what matters is the people that you, the groups that you give the set billable hours permission to. But before we get into that, I just want to make a note that on cloud, this is a project level permission. But if you're coming from server in DC, this setting is at a global level. So if you're migrating to cloud, you're going to notice that difference, but it also gives you a lot more flexibility with using the set billable hours permission. So it's on a per project basis instead of just across the board. So that's kind of handy. So you do need to be a Jira admin to grant these permissions. So I'm going to go into edit permissions here and go all the way down to the bottom of the time tracking permissions. And these are the ones that apply to timesheets. I go to set billable hours. I see right now it's just a very standard project access role, but I'm going to give this permission to this project role called consultants. And this role has all of only the consultants who are actually working on this contract, they get to have this permission. Now for these people, so for these consultants now, they will see the billable hours field show up in the log time for the issues in the Lunar Sustain project. And just one little tip I'm going to give you, and you'll see later on as Connor shows you how to log time, but if you need to fix errors that have been entered in the billable hours field, you can do it for multiple work logs at a time using the bulk edit feature in Timesheets on Cloud. And you can access from the log time report or from the team timesheet. And we've included a link to a video on our YouTube channel that shows you exactly how to do this. So that could be very useful later on if people do make mistakes, and that happens. So now let's go to timesheets, tempo, and I could go here from the apps menu and select tempo, or I can actually just press the G and T keys to go. But we will go here. And from here, we land in my work by default, but we're going to go configure our non-billable issues as internal issues. And just so you know, you need to have the tempo admin permission to do this. And when you do, you're going to see all of these settings that you only see if you're a tempo admin. So I'm going to go into the internal issues here. And you see that here we've already got some set. These are all internal projects that are great for like general company sort of non-work time, as in vacation, sick time, company meetings. This is something that you want everybody in your company to be able to access and log time to. So they're all here in one project. And this is another area where cloud is different from server DC. So on cloud, you do need to set project permissions for each Jira project that has internal issues so that everybody can view and log time on these issues. And that's another reason sometimes it's easier to manage them by keeping all of your general internal issues in one project. It's not set up, it's not automatic that everyone has access to all issues that are set configured as internal issues as it is on server DC. So just be aware of that going into if you're coming over to cloud. So speaking of other Jira projects, I'm going to add some of the non-billable issues that I wanted from my Lunar Sustain project. So I'm going to add this one for administrative work. And there's also another one that I believe is this one, training. So in this case, the training is going to be non-billable, but sometimes for some contracts, you also want to bill your clients for training. But in this case, it's sort of more general training that the team should maybe have had, or they're going to use on other contracts too. So we're not going to charge the client for this. So here we have these two issues. It doesn't matter, obviously, in which project these issues reside. Once you've configured them as internal, they are all considered internal. So what happens when issues are configured as internal? For us, the most important thing is that Timesheets prevents these issues from being considered as billable. So the billable hours field doesn't even show up for these issues, even if you have the set billable hours permission. And that's also really important. And this can really help to prevent employees from mistakenly logging billable time to these issues when there are non-billable. And it also makes these issues available, I'll just show you really quickly, on the internal tab on the issue side panel in my work. So you see these up here. So they all show up as soon as you configure something as internal, they're all going to show up in here. But in this case, for these two issues that I added, only those people who have the correct project permissions are going to be able to see these. So not everybody will be actually able to see these. So that is pretty much it for the setup for using billable hours. As you see, it's not too much extra work to do, but these steps do ensure that you'll get the correct billable data in your reports later on, which is obviously very important when you're invoicing. So I'm going to hand it over to Connor now, who can show you how employees will log their billable and non-billable time for a contract, and then how the project managers can run the reports. Take it away, Connor.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Edna. I'm going to take over from sharing the screen again. Just one second, everyone. Okay, so yeah, now that Edna showed us all that great setup stuff, we can start to get into actually logging billable and non-billable time. So as soon as the work on a contract starts, your team can log time to the issues in the related Jira projects. Most of this work, hour for hour, will be billable, and the billable hours field lets you specify exactly how many hours worked are actually billable. But why is time worked not always time billed? You don't want to go over your allotted time budget in the contract with your client, or you made a mistake and you don't want to bill your client for the time that it took to fix it. Or maybe your organization rounds up billable time to the nearest hour. So in addition to billable work, the team may also need to log their time to non-billable issues related to the contract. For example, the environmental team at the Apollo Consulting Group needs to do some training on lunar environmental practices, but they aren't billing Lunar Industries for this time because it's knowledge that they will also use for other clients. The way in which the team logs their non-billable hours depends on whether the Jira issues have been configured as internal issues or not. I'll show you how to deal with each of these in the demo, which I will start right now. Okay, so here we are in my work in Timesheets by Tempo. So this team member needs to log time for billable work. The issue being logged is SUST5, study green cheese sediments in craters surrounding lunar base. And we can find it in the issue picker on the right. You can see that this has already actually been configured to show the lunar sustain project right here. So I could scroll down and find it. I could also start typing it in, or I know it's SUST5, so I can really just look it up. And I'm going to drag that over to today's date. So when I click into the work log on the timesheet, I'm going to go into the settings and make billable hours visible, as it is hidden by default. So I just need to go into the settings here and drag billable hours into the visible field section and press save. So when I'm logging time for this issue, the billable hours will actually match the duration, so the hours worked, by default. So if I set this to 2 hours and click enter, that is going to go just like that. Now, you can also change the number of hours if not all worked hours are billable. Maybe you made a mistake that you don't want to charge your client for, or for some other reason, although 6 hours were spent on the issue, only 3 hours should be billed, for example. So to show that really quick, although this matched by default, I can go in and let's just say make that 1 hour. So then 1 hour will be billed, and but 2 hours will be logged. So this team member also needs to log time for non-billable work. Here we'll log time to an internal issue. So I will go erase this, go over to the internal tab here that Edna was just showing you. And here we're going to find SUST30, training on lunar environmental assessments. Start looking that up, and we're going to drag that over. So here you won't be able to see the billable hours field because internal issues are prevented from being billable. So I'm going to log time here quickly. Let's say this was 3 hours. But not all non-billable issues are set as internal issues. So here I will log time to SUST31, project meetings. Once again, I'm going to go over here, and maybe this time I'll just start typing it in, maybe because I can't remember the issue key, and we'll drag this over. So when I log time here, say I spent 4 hours in project meetings, I will in fact see the billable hours field. In this case, you don't want to charge the client for the time for this project meeting though, which is why we will set it to 0 hours. So I will put in 4 hours here and then just make sure I change this to 0 hours. But sometimes these meetings are billable, in which case you would let the billable hours equal the duration. So it's very important that non-billable hours are entered properly as not billable. Otherwise, they show up incorrectly in the billable column in the report later, and that can mess up your data. All right, so reports are really the end game for billing. You need to know how many billable hours there are on which Jira projects and issues, when they were logged, and by whom. At any point during a contract, such as every month or at each project milestone, the project manager or account manager runs a log time report to see how many billable hours have been logged. For performance reasons and perhaps accounting reasons, it's best to keep this time period relatively short. So I'm going to show you how to create a report that includes all of the hours spent on the contract, billable and non-billable. A project manager may want to share this report with other project managers or team leads who need this data or may have input on it. Then I'll show you how to narrow down to only the billable hours. So this is the report that gets exported and sent to the finance team. They bring this report data into their financial software system to prepare the invoice that they send to the client. And then the client pays you, so this is the real end game. So let's go back over to Timesheets. So I'm going to navigate over to the Reports tab here on the left. First, I'm going to create a report showing the total hours worked on a contract. This is the type of report that is usually shared with other managers or directors who need to see the total amount of time spent on a contract. So to start this, I'm going to click create a new log time report. If you have numerous projects, you can go down here and filter by JQL in the filter bar. So you could go down and filter by JQL. But for our demo, so for this purpose, we only have the one project. So we're going to filter by project, and we know that that is Lunar Sustain. Once again, I could start typing it in, but I'll just go down and click on it here. And I also want to group by user and issue. That has already been done, so I'm going to click Create. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my timeline to the month of August. It's much more data to work with. So I'm not showing what I just logged, but the time logged last month for the month of August are the same issues that I just logged. So when you're in here, you can also change to the weeks view in this menu. Well, maybe I'll do that, make the data look a little bit nicer. So as you can see, the logged column is displayed by default. I can navigate over to the dropdown on the right, though, to add the billable column and compare. I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to check the billable column. So quick note, if you don't have the billable hours field to change the billable hours when you completed the work log, then logged and billable columns would match, except for internal issues, which are not counted as billable. So these hours in the billable column all came from the billable hours field. So notice that internal issues are 0 hours, as well as non-billable issues also being 0 hours. So for example, here, the SUS 30, this was an internal issue. So you see it's at 0 hours. And project meetings, that was a non-billable, or I made that as non-billable, setting it to 0 hours. Also, a quick note here, if you're using Tempo accounts, do not use this billable column in your reports. It's not necessary, and it may confuse you, especially with your non-billable accounts. The billable column is only for the billable hours workflow. So the last thing we need to do here is save this report and then share it with others. Usually these are people who have the same project and team permission so that they can see the same data as you, such as other project managers. So I'm going to go up to save here on the left. I'm going to click save, and I'm going to title this Lunar Industries Total Hours. That's what it is for this report, and do August 2023, and then click save this report. Like I said, I also wanted to share this report. So share is over here on the right. If I click on that, start typing in someone's name, I know who I'm sharing it with. John Steele, I'm going to click that, and it has been shared with him. So next, I'm going to create the billable hours only report. So this is the type of report that is usually sent to finance teams. And I can create this report right from the report that I just made. I'm going to remove the log column since we only want to see billable. So once again, go over here and get rid of the logged column. So it's just billable here now on the left. I'm also going to select add work logs in this group by section. Click that and then click apply. This is optional, but many clients like to see the individual work logs for extra verification. Now, very important here, we don't want to save over the other report. So we're going to go up to this arrow here, click Save As, and we're going to call this, to differentiate it, we will do Lunar Industries, whoops, billable hours, August 2023. And we will save that just like that. So this report is being sent to the finance team. Since quite often the finance team doesn't have the same project or team permissions, instead of sharing the report, we can export it as an XLS, so as an Excel file. So I go over here and export this. So then it can be sent to the finance team where they can create the invoice from the billable data. Once it's in the what it downloads to, so like on Mac numbers, for example, it shows up just like it does on this report here. So you'll be able to see the billable hours column, the total hours for that report, etc. All right, so quick shift in gears. Let's have a look now at how Timesheets is being integrated with our other Tempo products. So the combination of Timesheets plus Cost Tracker and now plus Planner is a powerful combination for professional services workflows. You can use Timesheets plus Cost Tracker to track revenue coming from billable hours of timesheets. This gives you complete labor costs and revenue for your project in Cost Tracker. And in addition to that, you can also get planned time data from Planner into Cost Tracker to get forecasting for project costs and revenues. So this is very new. This was actually just released this morning, which is very convenient for this webinar. So yeah, very, very exciting. Here you can see in Cost Tracker, so the revenue being tracked from the billable hours from Timesheets. So next, if you're using Structure by Tempo to manage your Jira project data, getting both logged and billable hours from Timesheets into that structure can allow you to manage your project in one spot. So again, this is the billable hours data that we just showed you in this webinar. This data is viewed in Structure using the Tempo work logged column. You can also use the Tempo billable time variable within a formula to do calculations or comparisons based on your billable time data. So this is all very powerful stuff for SPM, or strategic portfolio management. So here in Structure, for example, we can see two versions of the Tempo work logged column, one with all work logged, and then one here with only billable work. And one more integration is Timesheets with custom charts. So custom charts is a powerful data visualization tool to create reports and charts in your Jira dashboard and in Confluence. The teams at Tempo are currently in the process of integrating it with other Tempo products, including Timesheets. Custom charts already supports the reporting of data from Tempo team and Tempo account fields. Coming soon is the capability to create reports using work log authors and work log dates, which will allow customers to see how work is proceeding over time. All right, and with that, I will throw it over to Catherine quickly to speak through the 2023 Timesheets roadmap.
Thanks, Connor, and hello again, everyone. I'll be walking you through the highlights of what's still in store in Timesheets this year. On Cloud, we're working on providing better, faster Tempo reports, and we're first tackling performance improvements with the goal to deliver highly requested and highly anticipated features like support for Jira custom fields, as well as scheduled reports. As you heard earlier, Tempo also has a separate product called Structure. It's a project portfolio management tool that integrates deeply and seamlessly with Timesheets. This integration is actually currently already available, but this quarter we're making it easy to access Structure from within Timesheets. And from there you can create any custom report you like, and you may have already seen a sneak peek of that custom report tile earlier during the demo. And yeah, like Connor said, with Structure, you could flexibly view and manage issues in any hierarchy, even with levels above Epic. You can add any field you like as a column, group, and filter by them as you like. And the nifty part too is that Structure lets you write formulas to do real-time calculations on your Jira data. But the big part here is that it lets you pull timesheets data like logged and billable hours, as well as planner data like plan time. And all of that can roll up and you can see in any grouping. Really means that you could manage all of your projects and teams with all the data you need in one view. Over on the data center and server side, we're also working on performance improvements to ensure that you're able to use current and future functionalities with no problem. And finally, coming very, very soon, is the first phase of our bulk work log editing feature. It's again a highly upvoted feature and a huge time saver that we delivered on cloud already, which will soon come to on-prem. I'd also like to leave you with 3 important and useful links. First, I've just shared the timesheets highlights, but you can always view the full timesheets public roadmap and the Tempo portfolio roadmap at tempo.io/roadmap. Second, if you have any product ideas or improvements that you didn't see covered today or didn't see on the public roadmap, please share them or upvote existing ones at ideas.tempo.io. And last but not least, almost all of the cloud features mentioned today will go through Tempo Lab, our early access program. So we encourage you to join, as your feedback will help shape the final outcome of our features and solutions. And that wraps it up for me. Over to you, Connor.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I do want to mention that these slides, again, will be shared with you after the webinar. So we've added a list of some great resources here to continue your learning past this webinar. There are some help center links you can see here, as well as some videos and the link to Tempo Lab, which was just mentioned. Also, be sure to bookmark our events page to stay in the know on upcoming sessions, such as later in September, our next webinar, which will be getting started with structure on cloud, speed, and power mode.